Do this, and your crush will feel nervous around you. Not only that, but she'll constantly think about you, to the point where she won't have time to think about other guys. You could say she'll become completely addicted to you. The trick I'm about to share is a high-level manipulation technique, often used by players to trap their targets. I hope you'll copy the method, but not the intent. Trick is simple. You give her a sensation that makes her feel excited. It's the feeling women crave from a guy, but surprisingly, not many men know how to provide it. You understand and use this knowledge, you'll be able to control and captivate a woman easily. So, what's the sensation that women seek? The answer is curiosity, an urge to know more, those moments when she spends time guessing and wondering. To make this clearer, let me share a story about a guy named Mark. Mark is a high-level playboy who has charmed all kinds of women, innocent girls to classy ladies, and even wild women. They've all fallen into Mark's trap. This time, Mark faced an unusual challenge. High-class woman named Grace. Grace was successful in her career, earned a lot of money, and was stunningly beautiful. Tall, slim, fair-skinned, basically every man's dream. Mark knew that conquering someone like Grace wouldn't be easy, and sure enough, when he tried to approach her, she remained cold and distant, even ignoring his presence. But with his experience and playboy confidence, Mark didn't give up. Eventually, Grace agreed to go on a dinner date with him. And that's when Mark began playing his manipulation game. He picked Grace up in his car, dressed sharply, and acted like a refined gentleman. Mark took her to a romantic restaurant, and throughout the night, they talked mostly about Grace's work. Mark had done his homework, researching her job, so he could keep up with the conversation and match her level. He portrayed himself as a high-class man, completely in tune with Grace's sophisticated personality. A week later, Mark asked Grace out again. At first, she declined, but Mark persisted, and eventually, she agreed. When Grace asked where they were going, Mark just smiled and said he'd pick her up that night. To Grace's surprise, Mark showed up on a motorcycle, dressed casually like a biker, and took her to a simple, down-to-earth place for dinner. That night, Mark showed a completely different side of himself. He was more relaxed, cracking jokes, and even teasing Grace playfully. To his surprise, Grace thoroughly enjoyed the evening. She had never been picked up on a motorcycle before, never dined in such a modest place, and what thrilled her the most was Mark's sudden transformation. From the stiff, formal man she met on their first date to this fun, lively, and unpredictable guy. After that night, Grace's attitude towards Mark changed completely. From being cold and indifferent, she became warm and friendly. Mark didn't let this opportunity slip by. His manipulation tricks intensified as he started taking Grace out more often, always trying to add something new to their encounters. Sometimes, Mark would act like a classy gentleman, picking her up in a sophisticated way. Other times, he'd switch things up, showing a more playful side and taking her to unexpected places. He would take her to places unfamiliar to someone like Grace, like a local art exhibition or a street. They even once went on a spontaneous walk together. As time passed, their relationship grew closer. Eventually, Grace fell completely for Mark. At this point, you might not yet realize the manipulation technique Mark was using. It's actually very simple, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, creating the sensation of uncertainty and curiosity, which made Grace feel nervous at first. In the beginning, Mark had to fight to get Grace's attention. During this phase, he made efforts to show that they had things in common so that Grace would feel comfortable talking to him. After establishing that comfort, it was time for Mark to implant feelings of curiosity and intrigue in Grace's mind. He did this by introducing new and unexpected experiences every time they met, especially making her feel things she hadn't experienced before, like picking her up on a motorcycle and dining at a humble spot. For someone like Grace, a high-class woman, these were completely new experiences. On top of that, Mark employed an even more powerful and manipulative trick, showing different sides of his personality. Women tend to make quick judgments about people they meet. Grace quickly labeled Mark as stiff and boring, guy trying too hard to appear high class just to win her over. But by the second date, her opinion of him completely shifted. Mark suddenly became a fun and entertaining guy who could make her laugh. When Grace felt this, curiosity grew. She began wondering what other sides of Mark she would discover on their next meeting. She started to guess what surprises Mark would bring, how he would pick her up, and where he would take her next. This curiosity kept Grace thinking about Mark constantly, making her feel both excited and anxious whenever they planned to meet. By this stage, Grace had completely fallen into Mark's trap. In conclusion, the manipulation technique you can use to make a woman feel tense, curious, and always thinking about you is 1. Make her feel comfortable with you by showing that you share common interests. 2. Offer her something new, something she's never experienced before. 3. Show different sides of your personality. 4. Repeat this pattern consistently. When you meet the girl, leave her wondering about the next surprise you'll give her. Once again, I remind you, you can learn from the way a player conquers women, but don't copy their intent. Alright, that's all for this video. Hope it helps.